So we're going to look at how does parish renewal happen? And really practical questions about that. And who better to do that than some of our top coaches here at Divine Renovation and a member from our programs and services team.
Welcome to the launch of Divine Renovation's Missional Leadership Podcast. And here is Jacqueline Marie, storyteller at Divine Renovation.
So today we're going to talk about what that season's going to look like, and you're going to meet the 3 new people that are going to be on this podcast, although all of them will be familiar to you if you've been listening to Divine Renovation's podcast since we started years ago. So first, I'd love to introduce Tammy. So Tammy, hello and welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Jacqueline. Thanks so much. Can I just say that I love the storytelling energy that you bring to the ministry and to the podcast, and how even as a staff member on the programs and services team, how your stories inspire me. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I paid her for that. Tammy, could you give everybody your official title? What do you do here at Divine Renovation?
Sure. So I am the leadership coaching coordinator. So I work with our programs and services team. Primarily, I'm helping to align parishes with coaches at various stages within their own journey of parish renewal, and also helping us in our strategic conversations around how best to support our priests in that manner. So oftentimes we'll take our coaching and we'll develop programs to accompany what we might do live in a one-to-one or a cohort experience.
Love it. Okay, so this is the part where I am but an infant in terms of experience compared to you. You have been with DR for how long?
So I'm actually coming up on my 5th year anniversary with the ministry.
Oh, that's so exciting. Oh my goodness. And I recognize, like, listeners, if you're thinking 5 years, well, that's good and solid. When we look at how long DR, like when we look from 2017, or if you look back, I guess, to the 2016 conference, that's a disputed date of start. You've been with DR for most of it. So that's amazing to me. I think that really gives you a wealth of practical knowledge of just where the ministry has been and where it's going. Can you talk to us a little bit about who you are? So where are you located and all that jazz?
Yeah. So although I've been with the ministry for 5 years, I've been a member of St. Benedict Parish since 2013. So I am located in Halifax. And for those that may not know, this ministry was born out of St. Benedict Parish. So I've got to experience, I guess, firsthand what it was like in those earlier years, where there was a lot of wrestling going on, trying to figure out how to bring new life into a parish and how to combat that standard that we see of parishes kind of dying and attendance dropping off and not high levels of engagement. So I have that lived experience that I guess I just really am passionate about others getting to experience as well. I see how it has impacted my own family, and I want that for others.
I love that. Can you speak to that a little bit more in terms of, you're saying what is birthed in you? What is the thing that you keep on hanging on to even after you've seen renewal? Your parish has experienced renewal. What is it that still makes you most excited about parish renewal?
Because I'm still equally very aware of the darkness in the world outside and the hunger for truth and love and acceptance. And I feel like our church has the ability to fill that void in people's lives, but they don't necessarily know how to do it. Oftentimes we have ministries that are kind of outside the church, but they're one-dimensional, and they're not necessarily linked to a parish experience, where parishes have the ability to continue to journey with people. So I think ultimately I have this desire for people to encounter Jesus and get their self-worth from who they were created to be, but then to also have an environment where a community can continue to grow with them and help them to grow in discipleship.
I love it. That is the perfect answer. Now, on the upcoming, not that you're being scored, just to be clear, none of this is being graded. So in this upcoming season, tell me a little bit or some hints about the topics you'll be covering. You don't have to do all the spoilers, but just give us an idea of what is this season going to be about?
Okay, I'll start with one that I have found particularly enlightening, and it's on culture. Culture is very nebulous, and I don't think it's anything that people would really pinpoint as an area where you can have impact in your parish. So we actually start to take a deeper dive and break that open and make it a more tangible experience as to how you can start to impact that culture in your parish. Another one that we dive into is often in webinars, I'll see comments from people who are listening saying, Alpha didn't work in my parish. And so we often speak into this idea of having an evangelization strategy, and within that strategy, a tool that we recommend is Alpha. And I don't want to get into too many details because there's options there, but we found that it works very well. We want to take a deeper dive and support those parishes who it's not working well for, and start to look at why and how they can change what they're doing and in their approach to Alpha. So some tangible experiences like that.
I love it. And so helping you do this, not that you couldn't, because I totally trust your competency. So you're going to be hosting us and guiding us on this journey. But along for the ride, I believe you have a couple coaches. Who do you have coming with you?
I do have a couple of friends joining me from our coaching team. And I must say, it's such a pleasure to sit down with these guys because I learn so much from them. I am not a coach by background. I am an engineer, and I tend to think in very practical terms. And so my conversations with these guys is so enlightening. And I really think that our audience is going to enjoy hearing from them as well. So along with me, I'm bringing Rob McDowell and Matt Regetz, who, are two of our most senior coaches.
And who I happen to hear in the background. So welcoming you guys on now. Hello, Matt. Hello, Rob. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello, Jacqueline.
Hello, Jacqueline and Tammy. And Rob.
So you guys are allowed to talk to each other as well. So Matt, you were just on the podcast at our Advent/Christmas episode, and both of you have been on the podcast in the past. And Rob, you have done quite a few episodes of the podcast in the past. Is that correct?
Yeah, back in kind of like pre-COVID, that iteration of the podcast, I was on a handful of them back then.
I like that instead of like BC.
Oh, he's the original OG, Jacqueline. He's like, I was on a few.
Actually,
I'm going to say that to Father James. Rob is the original.
Yeah, they had the podcast for a couple years before I was on the first one. So it actually existed a long time before I started.
I do enjoy the time frame being before COVID, like BC, before COVID. Yes. So now for listeners that don't know you as well, I know that we're going to definitely have priests and parish leaders tuning in that are going to be like, that's my coach, Matt's my coach, or Rob is my coach. And they're going to get really excited. But for those who don't know you, I just want to do a little bit of, get the 411 on the two of you. I don't even know if people say that anymore. I might be really aging myself by saying get the 411. Get the information on the two of you. So for you first, Rob, how long have you been with Divine Renovation? What does that look like in terms of scope of role? Where do you live? Just who are you, Rob?
Let me get my driver's license out here. No. Anyways, I started formally in a part-time position with Divine Renovation in 2017. I first started coaching back then with them, just took on a couple of churches. But previous to that, I was working with Father James at St. Benedict, and I'd been there since 2014. Had the opportunity to work with him there for a few years, and as kind of the initial couple conferences came out of St. Benedict and we started to kind of see the Divine Renovation movement, had the opportunity to kind of be on the ground floor of some of that and just kind of wrestling through what this whole parish renewal world looked like in that context. I live in Halifax and married 22 years, well, tomorrow as of the time of this recording.
Congratulations. Oh my gosh.
And then 3 boys. Yeah, that's kind of the big picture, who I am, where I am, what I do.
Love it. Okay, Matt, over to you. Same question. Where are you at? How long have you been with Divine Renovation? Who are you?
Well, I got to say first, you said that we'll have some of our priest friends that we might accompany on this journey tuning in, which might be exciting, but at the same time, if we're telling all of their stories, they might be afraid too. So, but
to be clear, I get permission. I have permission.
Well, I live a little south of Rob, a little southern province called Texas. It's kind of its own country down here. It's funny when we talk to the Canadians or really anybody outside of Texas, which is most people in our ministry, how many times weather comes up.
Yeah.
Yeah. We compare weather, we compare temperatures. We have to do the translation. Is that the word? From Celsius to Fahrenheit, because we, for some reason, still use that goofy system. But I do live down here in Texas. I've born and raised in Texas. I moved only in my life. I've moved houses. If you take college away, I've only moved houses twice in my life.
What?
Moved houses twice. Yeah.
You mean even as an adult?
Yeah. Yeah.
I just made my 9th move since my son was born. My son is 6. What? I just moved for the 9th time over Christmas. Okay, that's fine. So you're stable. You're a stable human being. Good for you.
I realize that's a fun fact, or I'm boring. I'm boring and I'm resistant to change, which is not true. I promise I'm not boring. And I actually do like change a lot because when I came to work at the ministry, I was the first person in the U.S. On the team. So that was a unique thing, right? I started in BC ×2 before COVID, but only 2 weeks.
Oh my gosh.
I was working at a large parish in Texas for 20 years. I was a youth minister, young adult minister on the senior leadership team. But then 2 weeks before COVID, I started, and everybody else thought it'd be so exciting. They joined me online.
Wow.
Since then, I've worked with these 2 ragamuffins. I was searching for the right word.
I was hanging there.
I was like, we're not calling Tabby a ragamuffin. Look at her necklace. She's all done up.
I fully embrace the concept, just so no issue here. Yep.
I gotta go look that up.
So yes, I work with these 2 ragamuffins on a daily basis, even though we're spread apart quite far in distance. Actually, Tammy and I last year at this time met for the first time in person.
Oh.
Rob and I met years ago at a Steubenville conference, but still, I don't get to see them enough in person, which is the sad part of it. My family gets to see me too much. So actually, in about a month's time, although I don't know when this recording is going to get released, I'll get to join them in person because I'm coming to Halifax.
Whoa. That's very exciting. I was going to say, when you're mentioning the Celsius and Fahrenheit translation, the one that my team often does within Divine Renovation is height. We're always trying to figure out because we've only seen everybody's torsos and heads.
I'm this
so we
tall.
don't know who's tall, who's short. So we'll see somebody in a picture with legs and we'll find it startling because we'll be like, what? They have legs? It's very alarming because we've never seen each other full on. Yeah. But it's also the gift that we get to be global and connecting with our colleagues or in different countries and different continents half the time, just by the nature of what we're doing in the ministry. Now I want to shift a little bit to your guys' upcoming season because I'm really excited about this. I think it's great that we kind of hopefully filled people up or got them excited through inspiring them with stories of what's possible. But that next step after that is totally but now what do we do? Where now shall we go? Going into this season, what you guys are excited about tackling or what need you can meet through what you guys are going to do. And this is open to all of you to answer.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing we're wanting to do is just kind of dive into the weeds of parish renewal issues. And, we write a lot and we've put a lot of resources and videos and things like that out there. So we have tons of information. But as the old maxim says, that no plan survives contact with the enemy. And, once you kind of get into the day-to-day grind of this stuff, how things tend to play out in real time, there tends to be an adjustment or a translation that has to happen. And, we certainly stay true to, what we believe and what we speak into. But, what that actually looks like day to day can have a lot of adjustments, variations. And so to be able to kind of step in and speak into kind of the reality of what this looks like on the ground in parishes that we've been a part of and parishes that we coach into is a little bit of what we kind of want to bring to the surface in the podcast.
We're challenged as well as a ministry by the parishes that we coach because they are constantly innovating themselves and coming up with great ways to renew. And so we're learning from them and we're taking that experience. And again, we're hoping to share this experience through the podcast. So I hope that the experience of others will help our listeners forward.
I love that. What about you, Matt?
I think about story in general, that's what captures people and inspires them. It's why we like tune into certain shows and movies. We like the story. Nobody watched Star Wars because they just laid out a plan or told us about the characters. You wanted to see it unfold. And so now it's like we pull the curtain back a little bit to see the how-to. Like, I think the biggest thing I'd like to see in this season as we start to break that, they're never separated from each other, but as we start to open the curtain up behind the how-to, is people don't just see us telling someone else's story. They start to see the possibility of telling their own story.
Yes, that's so good. I often say when I meet with a priest or a parish leader to hear their story, because so often the first thing that I'll hear from them is like, but we're still in progress. Like, this isn't a perfect story. And I try to reassure them, like, our point in telling stories is not to tie a bow on a perfect testimony, because that's not realistic. And I actually think that's a huge obstacle to other people then, because all they hear is that's unattainable. Because it's not the truth. The truth is that we keep going. Like you mentioned right before we jumped on that, a priest that we both know is still going, hey, I need help today. Not because his story isn't perfect. It's because it's real and we're living in community with other people. So stuff is always evolving and needing growth and help and change. So I love that this podcast is just going to, I think, really encourage people. Like, this is for everybody. And like you're saying, Tammy, it's not prescriptive of like, this is exactly what you have to do. Like, we're also learning from the parishes that we're involved with. That's this whole great community of helping each other, which is delightful. I'm curious for you, Rob and Matt, what is the most rewarding part about being a coach?
For me, it's probably, you see someone that has a real desire to see change in their parish and different results. And, when all of a sudden, they start trying things and experimenting, and all of a sudden, they get it and they start to see the beginnings of change happening. And the joy that kind of comes to life in them as a result of that. Sometimes these priests have been going 20, 30, maybe even 40 years, just kind of putting in time, being responsive, didn't know that there was a different way of doing it. And then to see them come alive at the fact that results can be different, transformation can be experienced, parish life can be a positive, life-giving thing for people. And that's just one of the coolest things that never gets old.
Can I just say what he said? I mean, that's perfect. It's just so true. And because we don't get to always hear the changed lives of the people in the pews. Like a lot of times it's the priest or the team telling us what's happening, right? They're telling the story. But I'll say that, like, when you hear a priest say, enough is enough, or it doesn't have to be this way, or I want to go in a new place, or imagine if, and they start to dream. I was sitting down with a bishop last year, and this bishop said to me, like, from his own kind of grieving father's shepherd's heart, he said, parish decline suits a lot of priests. And I thought about that for a minute, like, that's terrible. And we admit it's terrible. But it's not that they became priests to see decline. It's that so much has been placed on the shoulders of these priests that either doesn't need to be placed there, or they're not trained or equipped for, or they're not supported in, that it's just like they have the life sucked out of them. Like they got into the business to see changed lives. So when you see a priest, sometimes maybe traveling few years of not experiencing that as a priest for whatever reason, or not being supported in that, to now come back and say, I want to be in the life-changing business. I want to see us do something new. I want to see people in my parish come to faith and share their faith and grow the place rather than just combining churches or closing doors or a lot of times it's just, how do we make the bills pay this month? That's not why they became priests. And when you see priests come back to life like that, it's worth every single struggle that we might have to face.
I love how you mention, like, you're not actually meeting the parishioners that then are these individuals that their lives are being changed because the parish has been renewed. Because I just had this experience. This has all come together within the last month where I've done 3 different interviews that has actually interwoven without me knowing it was going to. And this is so exciting for me because I'm really have nothing to do with, I am not out there doing the hard work. I am just collecting the fruit. I call myself a little cheater. One of the things we really focus on at Divine Renovation is that we want to share stories. We don't want to take stories. And to share a story, it still needs to be theirs. And so I won't include names with these because it's not quite at that point. But I had met with a priest who had been accompanied with us for a few years and just had a really thriving parish, really great alpha. And he's just a lovely human being. He goes on my very long favorite priest list. And so he was lovely. And he told me this little story of this parishioner. And he goes, I had this guy come back. He wasn't living in the city that they were in. He was out in Las Vegas. And he's like, he was about to lose his partner. He was about to lose his family. And he's dealing with all these things. So I said, can I talk with that guy? So I get on a call with this guy who is amazing. He was like in the throes of addiction and some pretty intense, scary stuff in Vegas and about to really lose his family because of it. And he moves back. And on the first day back that he hadn't been back to his parish since he was a teen, where he had really felt a connection with God, but had just gone a different way. And this priest that was in coaching with y'all said to him, don't go back to Vegas. Do not go back. You need to stay here. You need to get connected with the church. And this is your, choose life. And he was that direct with him. This is your moment, man. Make a choice to choose life. And he did. His partner followed him. They ended up getting married. They ended up going through Alpha. They both ended up having massive, personal experience, conversion experiences of God at the Holy Spirit weekend. At least for him, I can't remember when it happened for his wife. He gets clean. He goes through rehab. Now he's this, family man. After all of this jazz, they stay in this parish. He is now helping lead youth who are going through really crazy, inner city stuff. And, one of his youth just came to him and was suicidal. And he was able to speak from that dark place and be like, no, that is not what God has for you. And that is not what's going to happen in your life. And tell him the truth. Then I get on a call last week with one of our donors to hear his story of why he gives. And he tells me this story about going to a conference in the diocese that this story is coming from, which is not the donor's diocese. And he's like, years ago, I went to a conference there. I think you were there, Rob, and Dan, and I think Father James. And he goes, and we prayed a lot of healing because there was a lot of brokenness in this diocese and there needed a lot of healing. And so there's a lot of conflict in the room. And we just prayed. The bishop was praying, the priests were praying, and it was just a really big shift moment. Well, that's the diocese where then years later, this guy comes back from Vegas and has a healthy parish to go to have his life transformed. So the way in which this is so interwoven, this is where the brilliance of God is so, you just stand in awe. He is working all things together for good. And we get to be part in our little corner. And thank goodness, what a privilege to get to be part of this tapestry, because the story is good. The story is full of hope. We may have parishes in decline, but this is not the story of the end. This is not the story of despair. This is the story of God's kingdom here on earth and us being part of it now. And hooray, yay.
Hooray.
Yeah. So I had to share that story because it involves the coaches so much. I hear about what you guys are doing, and Tammy, you'll give me a lead and then they'll just rave to me about you guys. And I'm like, yeah, I know, they're great. So I do hear that all the time. Okay. We're going to shift now because I want to finish up today with my fun 4. So these are going to be like quick questions, and then each of you has to give me your answer. So are you ready?
Can I clarify? I don't do anything real quickly. Like I normally have lots of words. How many words should accompany each of these fun four?
I feel like it's a 1-word answer for each one of them.
That's okay, fine. Restraint.
But if you give more words, I'm not going to cut you off. So it will be totally fine. Okay, so first question, favorite saint. Are you ready? Tammy, start with you.
Okay, I'm going to go with Saint Drogo because of his ability to bilocate.
Okay, isn't Saint Drogo the like patron saint of like, is it deformity or
coffee and ugly people or something like that?
Yes, I flippin' love it.
This is more than one word. That's not fair. Shetty broke that.
Okay. You're right. Who's your favorite saint, Matt? Go.
Saint Athanasius.
Okay, you're allowed to say why.
Oh, thank you for asking. He fought for the truth when it wasn't popular and even when it cost him a lot. And he's just a great defender of the faith. And he's at that time in the church, too, when I think everybody loved him before everybody fought over the saints.
People fight over the saints?
Yeah. Love that. Rob, what about you? Yeah.
You were the first person to ever ask me that question. And so I don't know if I necessarily have one, but my uninformed answer is going to be St. Teresa of Avila. She would be one of the saints that's read most by Protestants. So... Augustine would probably be the unofficial saint of Protestantism since most Protestants, but I'm not going to name him because I disagree with a lot of his theological perspectives. Yeah. But anyways.
I feel like that's the guy that everyone gets into when they're about 20 at their second year of university. They've taken like a theology class and they're like, well, Augustine. I feel like that's that moment.
Yeah, that's which name change if you're Protestant or Catholic on his name there, right?
Oh, Augustine versus Augustine.
You noticed what I said, right? I did have the Catholic. I did say it like a Catholic.
Pronunciation, yeah.
I love that. That's good to know. Okay, next question. Which of the 12 apostles do you relate to the most?
And why?
And why? And why? Yes. I like that my fast 4 has become a contemplative 4. Quattro. Okay, go ahead, Tammy.
Okay, at some point we are going to reverse the direction though, and I will go last, right? Okay.
To the last question. Great. Yes.
Okay. I'm going to go with St. Peter, which sounds counterintuitive because he was the biggest leader of all, and I am far from that. But I think because I can relate to his struggle so much and wanting to please God or Jesus, but just often getting it wrong and having to go back and try again.
I love that. Yeah. Rob, what about you?
I'm gonna kind of cheat and say Matthias. He became part of the 12, but he
13,
was kind of
13.
Yeah. Well, he was technically part of the 12. They were down to 11, so he wasn't part of the original 12. So depending on how you define the 12, right? You said the 12.
Yes. But why do you relate to him the most?
Well, because he was part of the group, but kind of an outsider. Like he never got any more, like. We don't actually know what else happened to him. I mean, there might be some other things in church history, but scripture kind of goes silent on him. And so I kind of just, I kind of relate to that.
I love that. That actually feels like the perfect answer for like the Protestant brought in to work at St. Benedict and be like, hey, I'm part, right? I'm part.
Kind of. Yeah. Again.
Great answer. Matt, what about you? Oh, how do you follow that? I think St. Andrew. On the other side, he's kind of the opposite of Matthias. Andrew was first, but then he wasn't treated like he was first. Actually, he's Peter's brother, for the record. He introduced Peter to Jesus. Peter steals all the thunder, becomes the prince of the apostles. And something Andrew does really well is he introduces people to Jesus. He doesn't try and be Jesus. He kind of knows the Savior's role in salvation. And Andrew plays his role. The other time he introduces someone to Jesus is the little boy who has the loaves and fish. So Peter doesn't try and do the multiplication. He just says, Jesus can do this. Here, little boy, meet Jesus. Jesus, do your thing. And I just want to be part of that introduction to Jesus, even if I'm not first or don't get all the fanfare like old Peter.
I I feel like there's like sibling birth order things coming out in all these answers that I didn't anticipate, but I love. And I've actually never thought about that with Andrew, how Peter stole his thunder, but I love that. That's great.
And just because I picked Peter, can I just say I will not steal your thunder, Matt, in our podcast.
We get along very well. Yeah.
I actually would love that if on the next season, everybody listened for Tammy being like, enough, Matthew, it's my turn. So I'm going to start with you this time, Matt. Across all of history, who would you want to chat with over a 10-course dinner?
No one. That's too long. No, I don't even know what 10 courses is, but that would involve lots of time and conversation. Oh my gosh. It'd be easy to pick, some of these holy role models in my life, but I would probably say my grandparents that I didn't get to know, the people in my life that have gone before me. My dad introduced me to Jesus and just played the biggest role of anyone ever in my faith journey. He didn't just take me to church. He prayed over me, with me, taught me how to pray, introduced me to a faith and life in Jesus. I want to know kind of where all that came from, like the good, the bad, and the ugly that, I didn't get from him, from my grandparents. So I would say like a collection of my grandparents' ancestor folks, just to ask a lot of questions for a lot of the backstories, even if it wounds me greatly to hear them all.
Such a good answer. Rob, how about you?
Yeah, I'm going to go. Yeah, I'll go someone different. It's just, again, how do you follow that? It's like, oh my word, yeah.
Well, you can't say his grandparents. That would be weird.
Whatever I say now is just going to seem very superficial. A name that maybe not many of our listeners have heard of. A guy by the name of Dallas Willard. Dallas died back in 2013 and was just a very brilliant thinker. And just really appreciate his writing. And so, yeah, I've met people that have met him, but never had the opportunity to. So that would be the person that I would pick.
I love it. Tammy.
Yeah, can I just add, like, Rob, I actually can hear your voice in my head quoting him and sharing his theologies and what, I don't know if it's just in our individual conversations or if it's going to come up in the podcast. But yes, I can definitely remember you referencing him. Okay, so it's interesting that Matt went first because my answer to this question felt kind of cheesy, but after hearing Matt, I'm kind of following suit. Because when I look back through history, honestly, I struggle to pick somebody too. But I would say my grandfather, and I'm sure if my parents are listening to this, they're probably thinking, really, your grandfather? Why? He died when I was quite young. I was in grade 2. So I don't feel like I really got to know him. Except through stories of others, his reputation supersedes him. He is from an island in Nova Scotia here called Cape Breton, where they often give you nicknames. So his nickname was Joe Judic, and Judic being a town in Cape Breton. Now, years and years later, when people, like when you visit and they want to know who you are, it's because they're trying to connect you to a story of your relatives and whatnot. And I just can't get over the reputation that he carried. He was a very community-oriented man and went out of his way to help those around him. And so I think he would have been a very inspiring person to get to know. What drove that within him? Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Guys, those were great answers. Okay, so I am going to wrap us up now. I am very excited that next week, this season that you guys have been creating is coming out. I am definitely going to be a listener. So I want to thank you all. Thanks to our listeners. And for those of you listening, if you want more information on the movement, the ministry, upcoming events, or resources, check out divinerenovation.org.